This is Requiem Metal Podcast, episode 68, The Melvins. Welcome to Requiem Metal Podcast. You just heard Honey Bucket. Who's that from, dude?
That is from the Melvins, from a wonderful album called Houdini.
I'm Mark.
I'm Jason.
And joining us is Mr. Grindcore Coon.
Mr. Grindcore Coon,
here
welcome.
I am.
And why are you here today, Mr. Grindcore Coon? Tell us why we raise your spirit.
A certain fondness for the Melvins, band from my youth. Kind of the Kiss of my generation, I guess.
You're kind of the PhD holder of Melvin theology around here.
Yeah,
You're probably one of the only people I've ever met that has almost every, I wouldn't say everything, but you have a fair percentage of Melvin's things, singles and stuff like that.
Well, they're one of those bands I dig the oddness of them, and yet they're like, very explosive band, very really uncompromising, and yet they've been on a major label, been indie, they've done stuff for themselves. I mean, they're very interesting journey from,
for sure. And the tune you just heard, Honey Bucket, that was I think that was the first Melvins tune I heard. Was that true for, I think both of us, pretty much watching Headbangers Ball and seeing the video for Honey Bucket with the farm animals running around with Melvins shaved into the side of them, and hopefully Mark will link that video up for
Let's see what we can do.
For the website. But
that was my jumping on point as well. I mean, and then kind of backtracked and kept going with them.
Yeah, you definitely went a lot further into some of the Melvin stuff. I mean, I would buy new releases as I saw them, but there was like periods and gaps of time where there'd be like 3 random Melvins albums that were released, and you'd be like, hey, did you pick up this one and this? And I'm like, I didn't even see those. Like, where did you find those? Because you used to find a whole bunch in Lansing when you went down to Michigan State.
Oh, yeah. Some of the shops down there.
Yeah, it was FBC. Fly Black and Circular, cool record shop down there. Always seemed to...
Still there.
Yep.
Yeah, still there, luckily. A lot of record shops not making it in the world. But they were cool because I think they were really into the noisier, more experimental music in a certain sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they were one of those bands where, they started out almost doing like a flipper type thing. Like, I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, but, being like the slowest band around.
Yeah.
You know, doing a bunch of sludge records to start out, and then kind of branched off into noise. And, you know, a lot of the stuff we're probably going to be playing here when they got signed is more, it's almost like their classic rock era.
Yeah. And the thing about the Melvins is when we thought about doing a Melvins show, you know, you have to look at the scope of their career. And I mean, you could do a 5-part Melvins show and just encapsulate everything you can possibly do.
Certain things.
Yeah. So we decided to kind of focus on kind of the Atlantic Trio, as we kind of call them, from about 93 to about 96, when they really sort of released, like you said, whoa. Sounds like a Houdini flying somewhere there. And we're, you know, like you said, they're classic rock records.
Yeah.
I mean, from start to finish, I would say that these are 3 of the most consistent Melvins releases in terms of songwriting.
Well,
you know?
a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were on a major label. They were getting major production talent, and they were like, it was like they were trying to make it.
Yeah.
You know, like make it commercially.
Well,
and yet still they were the Melvins, so kind of ended up having some weird twists.
Yeah, and you can't really erase, you know, you can't, like, you know, it's oh my god, I can't believe I'm about to quote this. You know, it's the great Dirty Dancing quote, you know, can't put baby in a corner. You can't put the Melvins in a corner. I mean, you can't trap them with like commercialization.
They don't fit in a box, man.
Yeah. No, they're always going to be outside the box no matter what you do. And a tune like we just heard, you know, Honey Bucket, which, I mean, just has this rocking. I mean, I was telling, you know, Grindcore Coon here before the show that this easily probably top 5 riffs of all time. Yeah. I never really heard anything that catchy and that thick. I mean, it's just molasses thick, but fast, you know, sludge rock, you know, and it's different than like the sludge stuff that you and I were discovering right around the time of the Melvins too, which was like I Hate God.
Yeah, so it had more of like stuff. You know, it was more punk than that, I guess. Yeah. You know,
it was almost like they were taking Flipper, that like slow kind of hardcore band. They were but they were also taking like
dropping in like Dead Kennedys and
Black Flag and just, you know,
going for it.
Yeah,
well,
so
don't forget the heavy dose of Kiss.
Yes, and we're definitely going to be talking about the Kiss influence. I mean, this is something Mark's probably the biggest Kiss fan out of the 3 of us. I mean, what kind of aspects of Kiss do you hear in the Melvins that?
Well, I mean, as far as the, I guess, kind of stripped down catchiness. And especially you hear a lot of Ace Frehley-isms in the leads.
Yeah, and the solos. And
like, there's not too many notes. It's more a kind of like, you know, for lack of a better word, like heartfelt or emotional than like technical. You know?
Well, I think of like the solo in like Love Gun, where he's really just sort of playing the vocal melody again, but he's like doing it like in an epic, like,
or like, you know, the Going Blind cover they do. I mean, that seems to kind of suit them perfectly.
Sure.
Yep.
And they did God of Thunder as well. So I mean, they've done 2 Kiss covers, that probably more, you know, that we just don't even know about.
A lot of live records and whatnot.
Probably live and things like that. And also, there's this pronounced interest in the Melvins, and this comes also, Kiss kind of fits into this picture in that, they're taking the early 80s, like, kind of hardcore stuff, the Black Flags, Flippers, Dead Kennedys, but they're also mixing it with, like, late 70s kind of sleaze rock, you know, Ted Nugent, which you know, when Jeff and I saw our Grindcore Coon, or Jeff, if you want to call him that.
Whatever, man.
We revealed your Clark Kent's out there to the public. But, you know, when you and I saw the Melvins for the first time, they were opening for Tool in Kalamazoo, and, like, Buzzo came out with the guys from, or someone from Tool came out.
Maynard came out from Tool and did the vocals for
Stranglehold, from Nugent. And it was like 10 minutes of, like, just warped noise. And, I mean, Buzzo played the solos and stuff. I mean, he's talented enough to be able to do, you know, I mean, I think in a certain way to do some of the things that the Melvins do, which is very deconstructive, you know, where you're kind of tearing apart music and messing with it. You know, it's like what we talked about a few episodes ago with Velvet Underground, John Cale.
Yeah.
Like, you can be deconstructive, but if you don't know how to, like, understand and write good music, like, you can't do it in the right way. It just sounds like,
what's the abstraction of anything, like
assholes,
painting, you know? You don't know, you know, if you don't know anatomy and then you try to abstract it, what are you really doing?
Exactly. You know,
like, and a lot of it comes from there. I mean, they're like a DIY band. I mean, and self-taught in every aspect of it. So it's just kind of take a path and run with it. Kind of thing.
Sure. But the whole thing with the Melvins, I guess, if you're going to look at their early era, you got Ozma and really gluey porch treatments.
Well, and another one would be Bullhead, which is really kind of when they finally put it all together.
Is that when
Ozma and Gluey Porch Treatments are somewhat unlistenable unless you're a huge Sludge fan.
Yeah. But they're very, like, influential records, I think.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, I think they had a major influence on the grunge scene for sure, which is kind of where we're going to transition here in a second when we start talking about Houdini. But what happened on Bullhead that was, like, the final ingredient, would you say?
They just finally started writing a little bit more cohesive songs. I mean, and I think got a little bit better production. Kind of just got their stuff together instead of just like being weird for the sake of being weird. They finally were just
and that's the beauty of, like, you know, Honey Bucket, which is why we opened the show with that, because it's 3 minutes. It's very concise, and it's almost like they're. You're right. They can be weird, which on Houdini they do a 12-minute kind of guerrilla drumming, spread eagle beagle tune. I mean, so they can throw that stuff in, but when they need to write a good song, they know how to write a good song, and that's what Mark was kind of talking about. As an artist, you can't abstract until you can, you know, paint.
Understand how how it works to begin with.
Exactly.
We can, but it's, I think, limited results.
It's kind of a falsity to it, you know. Well, the thing about Houdini, as people of our generation, kind of the, you know, people who kind of grew up in the early 90s remember about Houdini, is that this is when kind of, you know, Kurt Cobain got involved with the Melvins. He had sort of always, you know, name-checked the Melvins as like a big influence for him, and I know Dave Grohl was really into, you know, the metal scene and the Melvins and sludgy stuff too, and they kind of linked him up to help produce this record, which obviously brought a lot of attention to the Melvins.
Well, I think,
good or bad, you know.
I think, you know, part of it was, I mean, the Melvins had actually been making it, you know, for years before the Nirvana thing, but, you know, they kind of had, you know, were intertwined with Cobain, and you know, it's like he gets money, probably, you know, helped him out, hooked him up, or some A&R dude or whatever, just Kurt Cobain likes the Melvins, now we should
sign these guys.
Everybody likes Kurt Cobain, so anything he likes.
Exactly.
And that's an after effect. That's what, you know, Mark and I were talking about that during the Helmet show. I said, you know, as much as some people want to maybe slag on Kurt Cobain for his kind of martyrdom or whatever, the thing he did is he what Nirvana and grunge did is it created a realm of possibility for heavy music to sort of have a place on MTV, radio, and get signed to major labels. And almost like he was like a totally negative person, but he also did like kind of bring some music to the to the forefront or to more mainstream. I mean, in a way, I would look at, if you're talking about popular music that you could have found very accessibly on the radio and on MTV, I'd say the early 90s is probably it's the Renaissance period. I mean, there really has never been another era where you could turn on MTV at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and see a Megadeth, Sweating Bullets, Mother from Danzig, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, you know, all those sort of stuff.
Quickly went down the toilet after that.
Well, about 95, it fell apart, you know, which we talked about. But, I mean, there was, again, this beautiful renaissance from, like, you know.
Yeah, just all the different genres and diversity, you know, it was starting to,
and I think the Melvins
come to the forefront.
The Melvins like thrived in that sort of environment, and what you get on Houdini is not only Kurt Cobain's involvement, but you get guys like Billy Anderson, who's going to go on and do some of like the great Southern Lord stuff. And isn't he in Kanye and Burning Witch? Or no, that's Stephen O'Malley.
That's Stephen O'Malley.
But what's Billy Anderson been in?
Like Cathedral and Brutal Truth.
The only band I can think of that he's been in, he did play bass on one I Hate God album.
Oh, did he? Okay.
He's got that Men of Porn on.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I think he's. I mean,
he's more of a producer
for metal purposes. Yeah. Known as more of a producer for sure.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got Garth, G Garth, who did the first Rage Against the Machine, and he did. What else has Garth done besides the Melvins? I feel like he did some other big record in that era, but probably a Monster Magnet or Clutch or something like that.
It could be.
And then you got Joe Barresi kind of gets involved as well, and Joe Barresi has recently done like Queens of the Stone Age and the last Enslaved record he did. Yeah. So I mean, you're talking about a very eclectic mix of individuals being involved in making this kind of record. And Houdini itself is sort of this. I mean, I remember getting this in the cover. I mean, the Melvins had such like an odd, artsy kind of approach to everything, almost like they're winking at you, like we're trying to trick you and make fun of like music as
Yeah.
we're sort of creating great music, you know.
Well, visually, it's always been kind of an absurdist approach, I think.
Yeah. Well, and
And
I
creepy,
whole,
you know, creepy absurdism.
Well, and I think a lot of that comes from Buzz Osborne's wife, because she's done a lot of the layout
Oh,
stuff.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or even Melvin's coffee table book, which
Was that her that was responsible
did all
for that?
the layout and did all, you know,
And she's
created
designed a lot of the
art.
covers for the last couple, at least
Yeah.
like Epic Heck
Yeah.
run. And I'm
Okay.
sure- possibly before that, I'm not 100% sure.
Huh. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. And if we're talking about the band, we're talking, you know, Buzz Osborne, or King Buzzo as he was known at times, who's the singer and guitar player.
Yeah.
This era, the drummer was Dale Crover,
Yeah,
correct?
Dale Crover's been. Dale
Oh, yeah,
and
he's-
Buzz have been.
they're the
throughout the
consistent,
entire thing. The only thing that's changed is a bass player, which is about every 2 years or so.
It's kind of like the Spinal Tap drummer
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing, or Judas Priest drummer, which Mark and I were talking about a few episodes back. But yeah, and I think on Houdini we've got Lorax, right?
Yeah, which is Shirley Temple's daughter. So, if that makes any sense.
It makes about as much sense as anything
Yeah,
the Melvins have ever
yeah.
done, you know. And the album title, as Jeff and I are kind of talking about, it's called Houdini for a reason, because there's almost a smoke and mirrors aspect to this record. The first single is called Hooch, and it's the only song that they put lyrics of in the book, and the lyrics are absolutely nonsense.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, they're at best, most of their lyrics are abstract.
Sure,
you know,
but this is a
that's-
whole nother level.
Dada.
Because I can ford a red eed, only street a wide a reland. Diamond make a medieval bike a seika like a recast. Because I can ford a red eed, only street a wide a reland. I mean,
It reminds me of, all right, I guess it seems like they came up with a vocal line and then they just made up lyrics.
yeah, they just
Yeah.
hummed through it.
Yeah.
There you go. It's like, there's the words.
Do
And I-
re mi, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, exactly. And I catch myself like humming and singing those lyrics. I almost know the lyrics because it's in this like, you know, catchy tune, and that's kind of the beauty of like the title Houdini. I mean, in a way, they're sort of like mocking popular music with catchy choruses and catchy riffs and things, but yet they're like totally, as we said, deconstructing them and messing around with them quite a bit. The tune we're going to start out with here in this next set is actually not from Houdini. It's from the live Houdini, which was just put out, like 2 years ago, year and a half ago?
Oh, yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah, the History of Gluttony and Lust.
Okay.
Which, excellent record.
Great, yeah.
It's some of the stuff's almost better than the original, you know.
And they're a great live band, and this is one of the
Tremendous.
reasons we chose to play the live version of Night Goat is the second time I saw the Melvins, maybe third time you saw them, third or fourth or something like that. I was like, I had a really bad cold and we were in cough. I was drinking like all this cough medicine and stuff, which of course, you know, messes you up a little bit. And you know, Jeff drove me down to the show, and we were at the Magic Stick in Detroit, which is like above a bowling alley. And like they dropped into like 15 minutes like of pure feedback, 15 20 minutes,
if
you know.
anybody knows the albums, it was the Colossus of Destiny tour. That's really kind of an important. If you know the Melvins, that's all you need to know about that.
So they were into their noise phase a little bit,
and not really caring what anyone thought about it.
and the beauty was they had the strobe light like flashing at us as like they were just playing this pure like wall of noise shoegaze, like, you know, like pure feedback. And like the strobe light was just flashing, and people were like starting to lose their minds. I mean, I felt like I was hallucinating on cough
It
medicine.
reminded me of the time I saw Kanye, where people are just circling around, just trying to figure out, what do we do?
Yeah.
You know, like,
What do
you know,
slowest, non-rhythmic
bunch of
music
like
possible.
meatheads just like waiting to like, you know, start.
I want a mosh.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the mosh began in the midst of feedback, and there was a guy that was picked up and thrown into a pole, and like it was just nuts. And then it eased out of this, and it went into Night Goat, which is kind of one of their standard tunes. So we decided, in honor of that experience, to start things off with the live Night Goat. So we got a trio of tunes coming up here from Houdini. We got Night Goat, and then we've got sort of their doom metal classic. I would throw this alongside anything that like Cathedral was doing at this point, and also it's a sweet Candlemass riff, and that's a tune called Hag Me. And then we'll come out with more of a traditional Melvins tune, which we'll talk about when we come back, called Teet. So enjoy the live version of Night Goat.
It's a big dumb world now. It's a big dumb hill. You got low just thinking through. And I know it like a hell, like a hotel, like a fixie. My loaded friendly. Yeah!
over gentry, maybe you're in hand. Ace like a big and hairy happy sound. Toss no empty garden, you want to be ready. She's not afraid to feel more justly. Ask not and you won't find it right.
We're back. That was Teet, Hag Me, and Night Goat. And as Jeff was pointing out, or grindcore, nothing like a little feedback after a night of partying.
Yeah.
To get you going.
Drinking, you know?
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Yeah, we
Way
had
to start the day, then, you know, little Melvins.
a little Melvins hangover
Yep.
show.
Yep.
That's where it's at.
Gotta love that feedback.
And one of the things too that we should mention about those last two tunes you heard is actually Billy Anderson was playing bass on both of those, and there's kind of something cool about the bass playing on Houdini that I don't know, that kind of hits me. It's almost like a '60s Mission Impossible, like James Bond kind of feel to some of the stuff they do, like on this and Pearl Bomb, which is where like Crover's doing almost like the typewriter drum, like
Yeah,
you know?
definitely pretty, stylistic type.
Sure.
You know.
And you've noticed some things about like the way that Crover plays on Houdini, and even some of the stuff he does on the next record, Stoner Witch.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing about Dale Crover is just like, and actually you could say the same thing about Buzzo too, but there's almost like they build almost like a dramatic element, by being a little bit offbeat, by, when they're, he's hitting the drums, just having, a lot of power to it, and just like building tension in a lot of songs. And I think Joan of Arc,
with that the last track we heard, there's actually that where they're holding out the feedback or holding out the notes. It's like makes it just a little uncomfortable holding it out, like maybe 2 extra measures or something before they come back in.
Yeah.
And then, and that goes alongside of what we were talking about before with, the cleverness of the album title being Houdini, is that it's like a false set of drama.
Yeah.
They're almost trying to like mock the epic kind of 70s stadium rock kind of like big bombastic drums and like sing-along choruses.
Create this big sound, but almost in like a cartoonish way.
And then mock it with nonsensical lyrics that mean absolutely nothing. No, there is nothing important about these songs. They just feel important.
Which, like, considering the era, was just like, you got people being deadly serious about, nothing.
Lane Staley's talking about heroin. Kurt Cobain's talking about suicide and like teen, like
and the Melvins are talking about magic tricks. That's one cool thing about them.
And that what really was the beauty. I remember one thing too that I read right around this time that Houdini came out. They also put out a record called Prick, which they basically made to like raise money to record Houdini. It was just like a joke record that they just put out so they could get a little extra cash to like spend on making Houdini better.
It's actually, I went back and listened to it. It's better than I thought it was, but that isn't. It's kind of still one of the it's their first real like noise type album, which they'd go on later to do.
But it was almost a joke too.
Yeah,
so like that's again.
They have a song where they're like, it's almost like there's wedding bells going on in the background, and it's almost like the end of The Graduate or something. It's like, what are they?
Oh man, that's too funny. Well, the other thing too is that they what you're gonna hear in this kind of next set, we got one more tune from Houdini, and this is kind of I would say this is a live standard along with Night Goat, which we say Joan of Arc.
So, yeah.
And it's got kind of just one of the great kind of like just riffs. And talking about the drama, Buzzo does these like huge these sort of like big
wails,
kind of like almost like 80s metal like hairband kind of stuff.
Feel or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like oh man, like big time, and it's really well presented in this tune, along with kind of weird kind of hillbilly sample at the beginning of the song, like the guy
he's like,
come on, you knuckleheads,
through a megaphone or something.
Is that Buzzo or is that a sample?
I have no idea. Probably knowing him, it is.
Is this him? Okay.
Yeah.
And this
when they do it live, it is him.
Is it? Yeah. Well, that would make sense. The beauty of this tune is, this is also a tune that Kurt Cobain produced as well. That's the thing. Like the whole album is really chopped up in a lot of different pieces because there's, like I said, like 3 or 4 different producers working on this record to construct it. And I don't know if that's. I think that kind of defines really this era of the Melvins, where like. Yeah. One part of the record it sounds like this, the other part of the record sounds like this, and in the next record that we're going to get into, which is Stoner Witch, which we'll get into after Joan of Arc, you're going to hear a couple tunes from the first half of the record, and then we're going to end the set with a tune called At the Stake, which really is, Jeff will talk about that when we come back, like a definition of the second part of this record. So, so we're going to be blasting into Joan of Arc. And then we've got the opening 2 tunes from Stoner Witch, which brings back a lot of memories from us in high school when, we would rock out in your Camaro to the Melvins like sophomore year, driving around, and that sort of thing. Skweetis and Queen, which Queen, it's cool that we're playing Joan of Arc and Queen in the same set because Queen is almost like a more refined vision. Yeah.
Well, that's, to me, Stoner Witch is kind of when it's their most produced album, it's their most polished album. And yet it's like the first 6 songs on it are like, very committed, like almost commercial. And then the second half of the record is just pretty off the wall.
Yeah, which At the Stake is the 7th tune, which kind of opens up a whole new, realm of possibilities on the record. So, all right, so we got Joan of Arc, Skweetis, Queen, and then we'll end things with At the Stake. Enjoy.
It's only one might let you
That was Queen, Skweetis. At the Stake, Queen, Skweetis, and then we started things off with Joan of Arc. And Queen was actually one of the two singles from this record, along with the tune that we're going to be playing next, right? Revolve and Queen.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
You'd almost like hear them on the radio sometimes.
Yeah,
which was
every now and then. But
very odd to hear the Melvins. I mean, this is an era where the Melvins had like a spotlight on them for about 4 or 5 years, and then they kind of went back into the underground, which is where they've been comfortably since then. Stoner Witch is the second of the Atlantic Trio, and then we'll kind of end things here in a moment with Stag. And after that, they kind of go back to Amphetamine Records and Ipecac eventually.
Kind of really starts their really odd period where, they release a single every month. They do a trilogy of albums with, like, guest singers like Leif Garrett and, Paige Hamilton and, guys from Tool and stuff. But.
Well, and then in the 2000s, like, after we saw them, that live show, Jello Biafro from Dead Kennedys came out, and then they did the Jello Biafro and the Melvins records.
It seems like a bizarre thing at first, but it's actually a really good fit.
Yeah, it totally works. His vocals over top kind of the sludge hardcore of the Melvins,
Yeah.
But the tune we just heard, At the Stake, is kind of, we were talking about it. It's probably one of my favorite. It's my favorite song on Stoner Witch, and I think it's one of yours.
Pretty close,
And this is really the template for. We kind of debated whether it was the template for like drone music or not, because this record was put out in '94, and Neurosis puts out Through Silver and Blood '96, and
you can definitely you can draw a line to bands like Earth and Sun, and that whole
the Southern Lord,
the Southern Lord stuff,
Burning Witch,
from
and
tunes like this,
because it's like a doom feedback noise tune. It's got like the Jesus Lizard and the Big Black and some of that kind of stuff in it, but yet it also has like Trouble, Candlemass, but it also has
more
Black
of a
Flag, and it's all these kind
almost
of things.
more of a metal element to it than a lot of those, like you say, Jesus Lizard, that kind of thing.
Well, I think there's that heavy thrash element too, as far as the guitar tone and muted palm stuff. And
and you hear that in some of the tunes too. And I don't know if that's again that sort of late 70s, early 80s sort of songwriting influence that they have. That, they're kind of tapping into like Kill 'Em All, Metallica in a way, or something like that.
Yeah,
in a certain sense. So, the Melvins. You can pontificate and intellectualize as much as you want with the Melvins, but it's not going to lead you down any like clear paths. You either
like trying to tell how deep a mud puddle is.
Yeah.
That's the
you're quicksand. You're kind of swimming as deep as you want to go.
It's a little bit murky out there. So.
Exactly, and so that's the thing. You kind of appreciate the Melvins for what they are, or you don't. And like this era of the Melvins is definitely where I love their stuff, and I like their stuff after this quite a bit as well.
Yeah,
but, these albums I put on more than their other stuff. I'd say
definitely.
So, but we're gonna kind of wrap things up here with Stoner Witch, and then enter into a set from Stag. Thoughts on Stag?
It's almost like their most disjointed like album on Atlantic. Mm-hmm. They're just really. There's a lot of tunes that are like almost weird for the sake of being weird, and you could tell they were really trying to do some way different things. Mm-hmm. But it kind of points to the second half of their career, really.
Gotcha. So this is sort of that like
it's like a transitional album, I'd say.
Yeah, and this is the album that we saw them on the first tour. So. Because I remember them opening the show up with the song that we're going to end the whole show with, which is The Bit, with the sitar and some of that kind of stuff. But, it's hard to give a snapshot of a Melvins record, but we're going to do our best here. We're going to start things off with our last tune, kind of the most fully realized, I think, single that the Melvins ever did, a tune called Revolve from Stoner Witch. And then we've got a trio of tunes from Stag, Buck Owens, Skin Horse, and Berthas. And Buck Owens really has a lot of the noise rock aspects and kind of really odd percussion stuff sort of happening.
It reminds me of like a lot of the stuff they did on like Ambient Hostile Takeover, and later, it just kind of pointed in that direction, more refined, but yet going into some weird area, noise. including that in almost like a single type song.
Sure. And then Skin Horse, we're going to fade out some of Skin Horse because I think you'll get the gist of the weirdness after a point.
That's the weird factor.
And then come right back with Berthas, which we'll talk about when we come back. But don't be surprised you hear a little Kiss and Thin Lizzy in there. So enjoy Revolve.
You might be right, like I'm going away.
raise the battlefield, though bastardly. Follow said criminal in the palm of his hand. He'll chance the overload when it's all about the end. Maybe the size and soul will settle in. Everyone is shifting all around is agonized. Can't make this sort of sound. This and dust would sanitize. Gonna see it all the
Wishing I was at the window races all began. Shoulder on the angel 7, half of every golden hand. On those who really helped me, time unveiled. Tyrant caught in visionary.
Buy me a big one to say what's real.
Berthas, Skin Horse, Buck Owens, and Revolve. I love that tune, Buck Owens. It's a great song title.
Great country western guy.
Yeah. But Berthas is got, it's a minute and a half of just sort of pure, like kind of Thin Lizzy, Kiss, just sort of overdrive, I guess. Really like just refined songwriting compared to say Skin Horse, where they're just indulgent.
Just kind of going off the deep end a little bit.
Yeah. But I think for my money, in terms of the best songs on this record, The Bit still holds up for me, even though it's kind of one of their standard tunes.
Yeah, it's kind of straightforward. It almost reminds me of like More Than a Feeling from Boston, almost.
Yeah,
just like
that's
that
true.
kind of boom.
The kitchen sink, really hitting you.
Throwing everything at you.
Yeah, you heard it here on Requiem Metal Podcast. Boston, meets the Melvins. You hear that too often. But starts off with a sitar and then kind of goes into a traditional sort of doom sludge rock sort of thing. So, but all right. Well, we hope you enjoyed our venture into the Atlantic era of the Melvins. Tell us if you have a favorite tune from this era that we kind of missed or something. So shoot us a email at requiempodcast@gmail.com, or check out the website, which is requiempodcast.com. Drop us a line on iTunes, give us a review and that sort of stuff. And
you're a friend on Facebook.
Yeah, that's true.
Give us a donation if you feel this show's worth it.
This is true. Yeah, I think we'll have a donation button up by about this point. So, and if you don't own these records, they're definitely free to own.
Yep, they're worth it.
So, and thanks, Grindcore Coon, for sitting in on us.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Resident Melvins expert. So if you have any Melvins related questions, RE them to Grindcore Coon. We'll forward them to him. So, all right, for the Requiem Metal Podcast, I'm Jason.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Grindcore.
There it is. Enjoy The Bit.